call my best friend's dad. Played in the MLB for 13 years. His name's Todd Worrell. He was an all-star, great player. I called him and I asked him, like, what do I ask to sign for? Like, what do I ask for? And he says, ask him for $100,000. And I laughed at him. I was like, I can't do that. So I came up with, like, this is a childhood dream. It's probably not going to go anywhere, but at least I can say I made it there and I tried. So I was like, I'm going to ask them if they'll pay for my last year of school, and then it doesn't matter. And then anything else is just like, hey, I get to live out this dream and see what happens. And I was like, and I'm going to ask for $20,000 and like try to settle for $5,000. And I pitched that night. And I told him, I was like, I'd love $20,000 in my last year of school paid for. And he walked away, got on the phone, came back about 2 minutes later.
Welcome to Beyond the Game, Wealth Mastery for Athletes. I'm Kris Benson, private equity real estate investor, and I'm joined by 9-year NFL vet Alec Ogletree. Beyond the Game is a podcast where we will provide a playbook for financial growth both on and off the field. Join us each week as we'll have in-depth conversations with other pro athletes as they walk us through how they've created wealth beyond the game, both on and off the field. They're going to share their triumphs, lessons learned, and setbacks along the way so that you don't make the same mistakes. Join us. I think you're going to have a lot of fun. Brandon Beachy, welcome to Beyond the Game. Appreciate you spending the time with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Yes, sir.
Well, for those listeners who are not watching on YouTube, Alec is merched out today. We got new Beyond the Game merch, hats, screens, sweatshirts. He's going to start outfitting his kids in this stuff. So we're not selling it yet. We don't probably have enough listeners where anyone cares, but soon enough, Alec will be our merch guy.
We'll have it all ready, out and rolled for you. Just wait. It's just a
Brandon,
test.
I thought we'd start today's episode just with a quick question. I think what you do on a day-to-day basis is a lot of helping athletes transition from their professional playing careers into something else more meaningful. What I wanted to ask was, what are the things, and this could be either skill sets you learned or maybe attributes you had that essentially were transferable post-playing career? After your career in the majors, what were the things and potentially where did you learn them?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's one that took me a long time to even kind of understand. And that was, when I was done playing ball, that was one of the toughest things, right? Is I'm sitting there going through the career transition program with the MLB and I've got somebody helping me write out a resume. And it took about 4 minutes, right? Because I had nothing to put on it. So realizing that, you know what, I do have these skills and these attributes that are super transferable to the business world, to running a business, to anything. It took me time to understand it. And no one told me. It just kind of, I just have these little aha moments, as I was going along. And, I guess to list some of them off, I mean, baseball is a sport of failure. And that, I think, has helped me tremendously, right? As a pitcher, I'm giving up home runs, I'm giving up hits, and I got to take the ball back and make the next pitch and just kind of flush it. So just, the challenge of failing and getting back up. I went through injuries that derailed and eventually, kind of ruined my career. And, I got back up and I kept trying time and time again. So that resiliency, in business and in life is something that as an athlete just kind of came second nature. There wasn't another option, right? You couldn't just curl up into a ball.
Yeah.
Your teammates aren't going to let you do that. You can't do that. You don't get there having a mindset that that's possible, but I've seen it out in the real world. I've seen people that do that. They face a little, obstacles and they become, they make mountains out of molehills because they don't have that ability.
No, for sure. So I read as in one of your interviews that you did, you wrote down, you was like hard work, self-motivation, resilience, teamwork and leadership were like some of the things
Yeah.
that you felt that were transferable over from, obviously playing baseball and going through, like you said, going through your injuries and like what you had 2 Tommy John surgeries?
Yeah, I had two and a half, 3. I had another procedure later.
Oh, man.
But yeah, the hard work, like the inner motivation to do things, like that's how I became successful in sports. It's and you see that with like with kids and coaches, and you can ever some guys, and I'm sure you can relate to this, have all the talent in the world.
Yeah.
And they might get to college just on that raw talent, but they might even get to the next level based on that raw talent. Eventually, it's the guys that are working hard and that really want it that are gonna, they're gonna surpass them at some point. So that hard work and not needing someone else to light a fire under me, being able to do that for myself, get up every day and try to get better because that's what I wanted to do. That translates anywhere. Look, companies, they want that. Like that's a super valuable skill. And the other thing I talked about is leadership. I think is super valuable, especially for me running a business. And I think leadership meant something different to me before. I always looked at it as the Ray Lewis, the rah-rah speech, the big, everybody gathering around me, like that's a leader. And it is, but there's a lot more to being a leader than just that. And that's what I didn't understand until later in life was, man, being a leader, being a servant leader, being a teammate, a good teammate is how you be a good leader. Like understanding that, hey, we've got, 25 different personalities in this locker room. Some guys I love, some guys I hate, literally nothing. We're oil and water on everything.
Brandon, which ones did you hate? Tell us which ones you hated right now on Beyond the Game.
I hated the stinking guts.
No. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like not only do I have to get along with these guys, but I need to like be able to support them too. And be a good teammate when they need me. Towards the end of my career,
yeah.
As I'm trying to make comeback attempts through the minor leagues, like that really became evident to me where, I'm not the young guy sitting next to Chipper Jones anymore. Now I'm the guy
OG now.
Experience. and just being there, just knowing which guy that I need to pat on the back, and let him know he did a good job, and which guy, I need to just let him stew or whatever it is. Like understanding how to deal with different guys different ways, that's leadership, and that translates extremely well.
No, I agree. Anytime you play in like a team sport, and like I said, in baseball and football, like my world, it was like you're dealing with so many different people from different persons, different walks of life. They got a ton of things going on personally, right? But for all of us to walk into this building and have one common goal, and we all can set aside our differences and, personal things that we have going on. I always found that pretty cool. But also, as you said, in the leadership part of it, like I think being able to kind of help those guys in those situations, in those some of their person, like you get to know them outside of being in the building. Like, yes, everybody's not going to just be hunky-dory every time you see each other. Like you're not the best of friends. That's not, it's too hard to do that with that many amount of people, right? But at the same time, there's a level of respect that you have for somebody when you see them coming here to work, and you may know a little bit about what they have going on in their life, like just kind of what they show you. You be like, man, ain't no way. I couldn't even imagine being in that situation. But having the opportunity to come in here and work with and see how hard they work, and they do it day in and day out, like you said, just it helps with that leadership role. I remember when I got traded to the Giants, right? And like you mentioned, you was a young guy, sitting next to Chipper Jones for a while, and then all of a sudden now it's like you the older guy. I got to New York, right? And it might have been like my second or third week there, right? And I remember one of the young guys, I forgot his name, but they came, they was like, "What's up, OG?" Like, right? And I'm like 25, 26. Like I had kind of become like the older guy, right? And, obviously when I was with the Rams and stuff, it was like, we were always like one of the younger teams. I was like one of the younger guys on the team just kind of growing up. And when I got traded, it just like the roles reversed. And like you said, you just kind of, you understand more and you appreciate those guys that came before you, and kind of showed you some stuff where you took and was like, okay, yeah, he did. He went through this situation before. I remember when that was me being the younger guy, saying, "What's up, OG?" and all this to the older guys and kind of laughing about it. And as you mentioned, like you get older, you have things that happen in your life. You try to make comeback. You had injuries, whatever. You try to make a comeback. It's like, golly, man, I'm getting older out here, and you're not getting younger. Like you're gonna leave the game. You know what I mean? Like. You be like, okay, this is, I see that this is not going to, I'm not going to keep collecting these checks from the MLB or this team or the Rams or, the NFL period like that. So,
Yeah, it's a good transition. I mean, Brandon, in your playing career, you obviously, you came out of school undrafted. Braves drafted or signed you, right? Undrafted?
Was it 20,000 they gave you, I read?
20,000, yeah.
They gave you 20,000. What did you? Well, first, Kris, that kind of how we do. So, what did you have an understanding of, like, kind of finances growing up, or like was it?
No. I grew up on a small dairy farm, the oldest of 7 kids, and we didn't have a lot of extra. We were stretched and man, my parents sacrificed so much so that, just a quick story that I think formed a lot of my character. It was like my dad grew up on that same farm and he's like 5'9" and not super athletic. And the only sport he got to play was basketball. And he loved baseball, but spring is when they planted the fields, right? So, he made it a point in his life. And I remember him telling me this when I was younger, and it just stuck with me my whole life. It was like, he wanted to make sure that his kids could play whatever they wanted, and he was gonna put that on his back to make sure they could. So that weighed heavily on me throughout my life, and it still does, that sacrifice.
No, it's a responsibility. That responsibility gets put on you, and whether your parents meant to do it or not, it's there for you. And I guess to Alec's point, how did you think about money? Like what were the conversations around the dining room table? 7 kids is a lot of kids. It was probably, hey, how are we paying for groceries next week? But what was kind of the mindset around money coming into the professional ranks? Because you came out of school undrafted, so there probably wasn't a lot of expectation on your side.
Well, first, before you answer, were you like, I can make it to the MLB, and I know they pay a lot, they make a lot of money, like, they pay a lot of money to these guys or whatever, or was it just kind of like, man, I just really love baseball. It really doesn't, matter about the money in a sense like that, but.
It was a love thing. I played baseball in college because I got a scholarship, and it afforded me to go to a good school and get it paid for. I never thought for a second I'd play professionally. Obviously I wanted to get there. It's a dream. Any athlete dreams of that from being a kid, right? But even after I signed, like I remember. Like the way it happened was I was pitching in a summer league, and a scout came up to me after the game as we're fixing up home plate, called me over to the old fence, and he's like, hey, I really liked what I saw. I'd sign you if it were up to me, but my boss is going to make me, see you pitch at least one more time. So the coach was like, yeah, we'll throw him again tomorrow. And he said, why don't you, call your parents, think about what it would take for you to sign with the Braves tomorrow night. And we'll make that work. And for me, I had no concept. I had no concept of money at the time. So I'm getting on the phone. For perspective, I went to Indiana Wesleyan University. It's an NAIA school. We had just that year, there was a guy on my team was drafted in the MLB in the 14th round. He was a senior, so he had no leverage to go back to school. So he signed for $1,000 as a senior sign, and here I am, like with an opportunity to sign. I call my best friend's dad. Played in the MLB for 13 years. His name's Todd Worrell. He was all-star, great player. I called him and I asked him, like, what do I ask to sign for? Like, what do I ask for? And he says, ask him for $100,000. And I laughed at him. I was like, I can't do that. This is my one chance. Like $100,000 to me at that time might as well have been like asking for $10 million.
Seriously.
So I couldn't do that. I called my high school coach, did some bird dog scouting for a guy, and he called his guy, and he's like, you'll be lucky to get like 5,000, 10,000 maybe. So I came up with like, hey, this is a childhood dream. It's probably not going to go anywhere, but at least I can say I made it there and I tried. So I was like, I'm going to ask them if they'll pay for my last year of school, and then it doesn't matter. And then anything else is just like, hey, I get to live out this dream and see what happens. And I was like, and I'm going to ask for 20,000 and like try to settle for 5. And I pitched that night, and I told him, I was like, I'd love 20,000 in my last year of school paid for. And he walked away, got on the phone, came back about 2 minutes later and shook my hand and said, you're welcome to the Atlanta Braves. That's how it happened.
That's crazy. So
that's awesome.
Like you kind of just glossed over everything, but just in hearing your story, like it's, to me, you went and did like some homework. You went and did some research. Like you were like, you asked you one buddy, he like, okay, yeah, ask for $100,000, right? And you like, dude, you out of your mind? Think I'm about to ask for $100,000. Like, I'm a junior, like all this kind of, you kind of weigh your options or whatever, right? You like, I can come back to school, if all else fails, but what do I really want? Like you decided, like, what did I really want? Like, not necessarily I needed all the money, but if you're taking care of my last year of school, like that's money that's I'm freeing up from whatever else that your parents or whoever else was paying for doesn't have to pay. And 2, on top of that, being able to be like, okay, yeah, I asked him, but I'm going to ask these other people. I'm going to go do some more research, do some more digging, kind of get some more information. And they're like, okay, you're lucky if you get like 5,000. So it probably brought you down. You're like, okay, well, 5,000. That's a lot less than 100,000. So we in 2 different. And you kind of met somewhere in the middle. You're like, well, if I can get them to pay for my school and give me $20,000, like that sounds like a great deal. So like I appreciate the thought process of that, of not really just kind of taking the first offer. I don't even know if they made an offer to you at first or yet, or you were the first one to.
He told me, think about it, and then what would it take? So he totally put it in my court.
Yeah,
and he probably didn't have the power to even make me an offer at that point.
Yeah,
but I think he was looking out for me for sure by doing it that way.
Okay.
His name was Gene Kearns. He passed away a few years ago, but we stayed in touch over my career. He was an awesome guy. He was definitely looking out for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, no. So you talk about, having a guy like that looked out for you. And you mentioned your dad kind of as like your why in a sense. Who would you say was like a mentor or somebody like that kind of helped you through your career, that kind of got you started? Once you went through, you got $20,000, then you make it, you go and play, and you finally got called up in 2010 was what I said.
Mm-hmm.
I saw right. 2010, you got called up to play, and you're in the locker room now with the big guys or whatever, right? Was there anybody that you took to right off the back that kind of came to mind, or somebody took you under their wing?
Yeah, there were a couple guys. That first year, and I've told this story before, Chipper Jones. I mean, we're talking one of the best players of all time. He had torn his ACL, I think, and was done for the year when I got called up, and I made my first 2 starts on a road trip. So I'd never met him, and when that first day back in Atlanta, he came up to me when he got there to the ballpark, and he introduced himself like I didn't know who he was, and he's like, "Hey, I watched your games on the road. If you have some time later, I'd love to, if you're interested." He posed it as a question to me, like, if you're interested, I'd love to share my thoughts as a hitter on what I saw. And, I, of course, told him, no, I don't have any time for you, Chipper. I'm too busy. But no, I mean, I was like, I couldn't get to that conversation fast enough. I couldn't believe he was like talking to me and cared enough about me to put in that effort. But he talked to me for a half hour, 45 minutes about what he saw from, what I later learned is just such a high level that I didn't even comprehend at the time. And he gave me an offer. He's like, "Hey, I like what I saw. Please don't be shy. Like you're welcome to jump into conversations, listen in when I'm talking to hitters anytime, and I took him up on that, and they'd be sitting there at the table talking hitting, talking about, playing cards, and I'd pull up a chair and listen to him talking to some other hitters about what they're saying. And he would like tailor those conversations for me too. He'd be, they'd be talking about something, and he'd be like, and then he'd turn to me and he'd be like, and from your perspective, this X, Y, and Z.
Include you in it.
And it was really special, to be there and him take me under his wing to some extent. And I've never told this story, but I blew out in 2012, and we're celebrating when we clinched a playoff spot at the end of the year. I'm wearing my arm brace and all that stuff at this point. And he came up to me and gave me a hug at one point, and just very sincerely told me, you're a big reason why we're here. And it meant a lot. And he was always so good to me when he didn't have to be, right? He's a Hall of Famer at the last 3 years of his career, and I'm an undrafted guy that he doesn't know, and I didn't realize this at the time. I just didn't know the game. Like, how many guys come up for a game or two and never get back, and that could have been me. And he, knowing that took his time. And then after that, I lockered next to Tim Hudson, and Tim was he was awesome to me too, with baseball advice, life, everything. He's someone that I turn to for advice all the time, and just kind of, he was the guy I watched. Like I sat there and watched how he went about his business and learned how to be a pro from him.
Brandon, I just go back to Chipper for me for just a second. So one, that's the leadership that you guys started talking about, right? Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be, I'm in a circle giving the Ray Lewis dance and getting people fired up prior to the game, but his ability to get you connected to the team. And you might have been a nobody, like you said, like you may have been there for 5 innings and never saw any of the Braves players ever again. But it feels like that's what great leaders are, right? Alec, they get you fired up to be a part of it, whether it's a one-on-one conversation or a rah-rah. So I just thought that's worth pointing out. But the question I had, and this is just back to the baseball side of it, what made Chipper's hitting conversations different? Like, when you heard him talk about hitting, what were the specifics? And I'm not asking you to go through how he thought pitch by pitch, but what did he see that everybody else didn't?
I don't know. And I just realized I should have pointed out, that's why I've got his jersey over my shoulder, as I sit here every day. He's one of those impactful people on me, and I like seeing it every day. But, in talking about hitting, I later found out, and he told me this too. He's like, hey, for the most part, even in the big leagues, and it's kind of, I'm sure you experience this too, Alec, the higher levels, like you have this expectation that, man, like everything's going to be like, I have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Because they're so much better. And that wasn't the case. Like I had to be good, obviously, but I didn't have to be perfect. You know, I found that I belonged. And he talked to me about, you know, 7 or 8 guys in each lineup. I just kind of need to execute what I do. But then there's that one guy, maybe 2 guys on some teams that, hey, they're studying you. They have this ability to see what you're doing to everybody else and to anticipate and know what you're going to do and do it in a different way. And I can give you a story about that. Like I think it was my second, might have been my first spring training or something, after he talked to me about that. It was only a couple weeks later, I think, you know, I faced Miguel Cabrera in spring training with the Tigers. I mean, he's another Hall of Famer. And the first time through, you know, I struck him out on a slider, you know, short, you know, sharp little slider, real good pitch. And the next at bat against him, you know, he takes like a fastball right down the middle. Or, you know, I get ahead of him 0-2 real quick. And then I think I waste a pitch, and then I go back to that slider, and I threw a good one. I mean, it was one of the best ones I've ever thrown. It was right where, I mean, I couldn't have placed it in a better spot. And he just sat back and went down, and he hit this thing, and couldn't have gotten more than 10 feet off the ground the whole way, and almost went through the fence in right center field. It was hit so hard. And I remember sitting there on the mound thinking, that's what Chipper was talking about. Like that dude, I struck him out on that pitch, and I could have thrown him anything else and he probably would have watched it because he was waiting for me to do it again. And it didn't matter how good it was. I mean, he was better, right?
That's it.
So it's just the mental side of that, you know, it was one of the, you know, one of the small things that Chipper put me onto.
I always say, and then people be laughing like when I say this though, but like I mean it like so seriously. I'm like, these guys get paid too now. Like,
yeah,
these are not some like little slapsticks. Like, yes, I understand. Like, I should have made that play or I should have did. I'm like, but this guy get paid the same amount of money, if not more, to play the exact same game. Like. So trust it, like that's why you say everybody's good. It's just you know, for whatever reason, some people like, yes, when I play against certain people or whatever, like I know, like anytime I used to play against Houston, I'm like, okay, it just felt good. Like I knew I was going to have a good game. I always had like an interception or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, just kind of, you know, stuff like that. And it's like, it's not that I was just any better than the next person that was there. It was just something about, okay, today is my day. Like I figured it out what I need to do well. And like you said, just to me, it sounds like being consistent is kind of one of the main things that, you know, because like you said, if you ride that roller coaster up and down, you'll be all over the place. You'll never figure it out. But it's like, okay, I understand. Like, I'm doing my mechanics right. I'm doing whatever I need to do right. This guy, hey, listen, he get paid too to hit this ball. And as you just said, I struck him out the bat before. The next bat, I threw him the exact same pitch, or even. And I put it right where I wanted it, but he hit that thing to the fence and, you know, almost through the fence like that. So it's always, it's so funny when I hear people say that. And then like the people that don't necessarily make it to the professional sports world, whatever. And I'm like, hey man, these guys are professional too. Like we are all in the same field, you know? So
it's not golf. There's defense, right? Like there's somebody in direct opposition. Thankfully for me, like as a pitcher, I got to control most of it. Yeah. Right. So and that worked for me mentally, and it carries on to today too. It's like I could trust a process. Like I could build a game plan. I could trust the process, and I could execute, and I could almost feel good about what I did regardless of the results, because I knew like some games, like, hey, maybe I need to adjust the game plan a little bit, because like the game plan was pretty good. I executed okay and the results weren't great. So, you know, but at least the philosophy was, if I keep doing that, the numbers are going to be there in the end. It's going to even out. And I look at the business the same way. Like if I have a good philosophy and a good system, like it's over the long course of things, it's gonna work for us.
Yeah, no, I agree. So kind of moving forward on, what was your first, kind of opportunity or kind of thought process to getting into franchising, right? I'm assuming that, you are in the franchise. Obviously, you have your.
Were you thinking about it during your playing career, or was that all post-career, post-injury? Hey, I'm done. I got to figure something out.
Yeah, that was all post-career. I mean, I can take you back to that whole kind of process because we
love to hear.
There's some there's some mental hurdles going on through that whole process. So and I think, from the conversations I have, it's not too uncommon. I was in a place where 2016, I blew out my arm again during spring training. And I remember I worked all season. They gave me stem cell, PRP, all this stuff. And I rehabbed out in Phoenix all season to get back to a point where, I was making a rehab start late July. And I threw one inning, threw a pretty good inning. But man, I couldn't get close to touching my shoulder. My arm was just tightening up so much again. And I knew it. And I remember, I think I threw the ball away at some point later, but I remember writing on a ball. I kept the ball in my pocket and I wrote, last professional inning pitched on it. I knew it was over at that point. I got a text from couple texts from the big league, medical staff, like, man, your numbers looked awesome, velocities, all that stuff. And I was like, and I had to tell them, man, I don't think it's going to bounce back very good. I knew then, that's all to say, I knew then that I was done, that my body just couldn't do it anymore. But I was so crippled by what's next. Like, what do I do now with my life? I was so fearful of that, that I was like, we'll get this operation. We'll just kind of see what happens. And then 6 months later, arm's not do, like, my PT, he says, hey, I want to test something on you. And, he held my arm up at 90 degrees, did some things. And he's like, man, I think you have something called thoracic outlet syndrome. Like, I go see a specialist, and the guy, I'm hooked up to, I got heart monitors on all my fingers, all that stuff. And as soon as my arm went up to 90 degrees, I can see it flatline on the screen. I was like, well, that ain't right. And sure enough, he's like, yeah, your nerve is compressed, but not just your nerve, but your vein as well. Like when your arm gets up to your shoulder, you have zero blood flow to your hand. And he's like, man, I think it's like you've thrown 100 pitches every day before you get out of bed in the morning. No wonder your soft tissue keeps giving out. So when they told me that, and I'm sitting there scared to death of what I'm going to do next to provide for my family, I was like, man, this makes logical sense, why this keeps happening, why my body's betraying me. So yeah, I went and got the surgery. There were complications, with recovery. And it wasn't until the end of 2018 where I was ready to throw again for teams. But again, I was in that just frozen with fear stage, even though I knew it was like, I'm looking ahead at my paths, my options. And to me, in my 30s, no matter how, daunting the uphill climb would be to get back to the big leagues and revive my career, it seemed like the safest and only path that I knew to do it. So I did. And a little peek into the warped psychology I had at that time. It's like, for about a decade, I had been one class short of getting my degree, one class. And I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. And I didn't tell anybody why, but it was like in my mind at that time, had I gotten that degree, that would be me putting one foot out the door on my career. And while I was rehabbing and still seeing a path forward, like I couldn't do that. Like that would have been me just giving up. And so I wouldn't allow myself to do it.
Brandon, just a quick detail question. So during that 2-year period of rehab, had you made enough money where you're supporting your family? I mean, you're just sitting on cash. I mean, career earnings wise, were you getting paid?
I wasn't getting paid anymore, but yeah, I was. I mean, from the background I grew up, I was very conservative with my money, and so we were fine. We were comfortable. I had made enough money to take my time and try the comeback attempts, and then try to figure it out after that. So I had good people around me giving me advice and making sure that I was, safe. Thankfully, because I know not everybody has that. But yeah, I was able to do that. And then, so then I was healthy enough that I went to 2019 with the Giants on a minor league deal, one last comeback attempt. And, I had this weird, like, freak calf injury happen and missed some time. And then it just, it was gone at that point, so at the end of that season, I knew it was over. And then I'm really, back to the original question, like that's when I really had to like figure out what am I going to do now? And franchising at that point was not on my radar. To me,
not at all.
Had you made enough money? Had you made enough money where you never had to work again, or you weren't in that position?
No, not even close. Like I was comfortable. I was not in a rush, but I definitely needed to do something to have the kind of lifestyle that we wanted to have. Like, I could have went back and, bought a dairy farm and did that. No problem. But that's not what I wanted for myself or my family. So that's kind of what we did next is we sat down with my wife, like, hey, like the trajectory that our lives and my earnings and career was on is no longer, it's not realistic anymore. So what do we realistically want our life to look like? Who has that life? And I started reaching out to those people and getting lunch or coffee with them. And pretty quickly, I realized that they all seem to be entrepreneurial, because the one thing that I knew I valued was the freedom of my time. Like I had just got done with a career where I spent the last decade plus, having 7 or 8 months out of the year where I had to pick up and go wherever this team was. I'm going to be on the road half of the summer. I didn't want that. I wanted to be at home. I wanted to be there for my kids. I didn't want to miss their sports and activities growing up. Like that's what I was working backwards from. And all these people that had that lifestyle seemed to be all entrepreneurial. I had no idea. I had no idea how to run a business. I had no idea for a business. So that's where a friend of mine is like, hey, I looked into, this Two Maids franchise. I had a guy that was helping me. Let me introduce you to him.
Okay.
And so he connected me to that guy who's doing what I do now. And I knew on that first phone call with him, this is what I've been looking for. This is, franchising is set up where, hey, we're the system, we're the vehicle, and you just have to apply all those intangible qualities that you already have, build out a team and put in the work, and you can make it successful. So I knew right away, like, hey, this is going to be for me. But also, I was overjoyed, but also kind of mad. I was like, man, why didn't MLB or somebody, my agent, somebody connect me to this guy right away or tell me this was even a possibility? All I knew was, Papa John's and Taco Bell. I thought you had to be Shaq and be able to buy 40 Papa John's to make any money in franchise.
To make any money. That's so crazy that it's the exact same way. Like so many people just don't even understand the opportunities that are out there for you, everybody's not going to be a Shaq. Everybody's not going to be, the Peyton Mannings, all these people, right? But you still have to go out here and make a living. And being there, like you said, to me, I know for me, like playing in the NFL, it does provide like an opportunity to where I can be connected to these people that are doing these things, right? That, so it's leveraging those relationships and, obviously, doing the right things and keep your name clean, nose clean, and all that stuff like that, right? When you talk about franchising, did you see it as a way of like earning passive income, or was it something where you're like, okay, I want to be hands on with it, or like, I just rather, buy the company or put my money in the franchise or whatever, and basically just send me a check and I don't have to do anything with it? Or is it like, are you doing stuff where like, no, I need to be on site. I got to go and visit these companies and do all this stuff like that?
Yeah, it kind of spans that whole spectrum of what you just said. So I looked at a bunch of different concepts. I looked at some group fitness, like a massage spa type of thing, where it would have been walk into like this existing thing, and I'm pretty hands off. And then I started looking at the service industry more, and the trade-off there is it's a lower investment. It's going to require more of my time up front. But then the potential to scale it and scale myself out. Like my goal was, hey, let me get in this. Let me learn it. Let me become an expert in it so I can build my team so that I can step back and have that freedom I want, but also have, the base level knowledge and expertise to be able to train my team and build it, the way I want to. So that's what I ultimately ended up doing. But yeah, it spans all that. The one thing, franchising as a model, a lot of them are set up for, the corporate people that are diversifying, where they're not putting in 40 hours a week. The one thing I'll say is it's not passive. Like it's not a passive investment. It's a business. The analogy I like to use is like you can hire a full-time nanny to raise your kids, right? You can do that, but your nanny is never going to care as much for your kids as you do. Like they're still your kids at the end of the day, and a business is similar, right? So it's not a passive investment, like investing in the stock market. There is going to be some time commitment, but there are definitely ones that are set up for 5 to 10 hours a week or less, from the start. It's just different styles and models.
So what was your like first franchise that you went into that you saw as a great opportunity, and did it work out for you, or were you like, I don't really like this, and I kind of backed off and I went and tried to find something else or whatever, because everything everything has its pluses and stuff, but there's also things that you just don't really care for to have going on with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I would say kind of all of the above. But the one I got into first is called Koala Insulation, and I'm still in it. I spent a year. It's insulation in your attic, in your walls. It's not sexy, which is kind of what I loved about it. It was more. Part of the process that I help people through now is understanding the characteristics of the business and how it can check the boxes you're looking for, as opposed to I hear the name of the business and I think of it. I think we all do this because we're all consumers. Is we hear something and we think of that from a consumer perspective first, and that's kind of what I help people do now, is really get down to what your motivations are and look into it. And for me, the installation business offered me potential to build a team and build a market and grow relationships to build a really nice business. And that's what I did for the first year. I was in it. I was answering the phones. I was scheduling. I was networking with other franchisees, other installation professionals around the country, really understanding the industry and the products, and building a system for my business. And then about that year mark, I took my ops guy and made him GM, hired a new full-time ops guy. We hired somebody about a month later to answer the phones full time, and I was kind of out of the day to day. And still to this day, I'd say I probably spend 1 to 2 hours a day.
You don't gotta tell on yourself. You don't have to tell on
What's
yourself.
that?
I say you don't gotta tell on yourself.
No, it's all right. And I do it from home, and I do it by phone.
Awesome.
So I'm not out in the field. I've been there. I've been in the attics.
Yeah.
I've been. I've sold it. I've helped install it, and I think that's part of. If you're in a service-based business, it's hard to build a team if you haven't walked in their footsteps at some point. But yeah, the goal for me from the start was always to, achieve freedom of my time. Like I don't need to be, a billionaire to have the kind of lifestyle I want to have. What I value is that time.
Yeah.
And Brandon, walk us through some of the details of that business. When did you launch Koala? Was it back in 2020?
Yeah, end of 2020 we launched. I guess what kind of details do you want to know about it?
Where are you? So we'll call it 3 years in. Where are you from top line revenue standpoint? How many employees? What does that business look like long term for you? And is there a plan to continue and scale and grow and sell it? Or is this something that you'll just kind of keep clipping coupons along as you go?
Yeah.
What was like the startup cost like?
Yeah, startup cost, for me with the extra equipment and stuff, probably all in around 250 to 300,000 once we got into it. And then
did you do a loan as well, Brandon? Was an SBA loan attached to that or anything like that, or just equity?
No, I mean, I was fortunate enough to be in the position where,
baseball money, Kris.
Yeah, with the rates and stuff.
Baseball money.
And this is something else I've learned over the past few years is how really wealthy people leverage debt, right? So I took out a line of credit against assets. And, at a low rate, working with my, hometown local bank and people I've known my whole life. And they've only steered me in the right directions, thankfully. But yeah, we got into that, and, we did about 800,000 top line in the first year. And then about, just under 2. And then, we just closed this last year at like about 2.7 in top line. And we're, tweaking things and trying to, drop in, cinch up the belt a little bit on some low hanging fruit. And, one of the things that I liked about the business I got into was the ability to be nimble and go in different directions where I, if I want to, I can reinvest in a bunch of equipment and really go after, mass home builders and increase the volume. But for me, part of my decision is like, hey, we're building a good business. We're growing organically with our relationships. The margins are good enough on the type of services we're doing. Do I really want to add 3 more crews to equal the profit I would get off of maybe 1 crew now, and all the headache that would cause to go in a different direction? Like, I could do it. I like the availability is there, but it's not going to be an intentional thing. It's going to be something that comes about naturally, where maybe our customer service wins some people over and they bring in their friend that builds 200 homes a year or something like that, where that's kind of how it would have to go. And I tried another business. We tried tacking on a duct and vent cleaning business. We launched that, back end of 2022, going into 2023. And, it didn't work. it didn't work, and we learned a lot about it.
Why?
I learned from
What
failing.
was the difference? Because it seems like, I mean, just from the vent cleaning installation, similar customer call point, right? It's a nice vertical integration. I'm sure that's what you were thinking on the front end.
Yeah.
What were the differences either in the business or maybe how you set it up? One, that you're almost tripled your top line revenue or over tripled your top line revenue in 4 years. And the other one, have you closed it down already?
Yeah, I closed it down. I closed it down after about 3 months. Honestly,
Wow. Over
it just wasn't working. And I partnered with the CEO of Koala, and they wanted to use me as a pilot location to potentially sell other franchise based on what we did. So I had support. They built out the website, and like you're saying, Kris, it made a lot of sense. That's why we did it. It just didn't play out that way, where our installation customers weren't real interested in getting their ducts cleaned, and the duct cleaning customers that we did have weren't real interested in adding on insulation or looking at it that way. And then from a dollar and cents standpoint, the research that we did in my market could have been better. I think there was a player in that space that's been there for 30, 40 years that basically has grown that business from when they were in that truck cleaning the ducts themselves to now they are the referral partner for every HVAC company and all that stuff. And their pricing structure was just really, really hard to beat. And like, we could have made it work, but it would have taken 5 years to get to a revenue standpoint that I deemed worth my time. And I don't, it just became an easy decision. Like, I don't want to take away from the installation business, because that was part of the draw too, was I could use the same management structure that I have, to piggyback this on. And what ended up happening was it pulled my managers away from our core business for revenue that wasn't worth our time. So it made sense to pull the plug quicker than just continue going down that road.
I love, Brandon, I love you keep using the word intention or intentionality. And this is something I've tried to talk through with my kids as well, as almost starting with the end point in mind. And how you're framing it is, look, here's the lifestyle I want to live. Let's build a business that allows me to live this lifestyle. Not, hey, I want to be a billionaire, because I think that requires a different level of intention, sacrifice, etc. I love that idea of trying to find the lifestyle first and then build around that the infrastructure that's going to support it. And then you can make decisions really easily of, does this fit? No. Okay, I'm not going to do that anymore. Does my duct cleaning help me get there? Nope. All right, let's shut it down. We'll be done. That's something that applies to everything, not just the business world, but just life as well. Did someone teach you to do that? Because I realized it probably when I was in my mid 30s, like, oh, I want my life to look like this. How do I build around it to get there? Or was that mentored to you?
Yeah, I'm going to give credit to a mutual friend of ours, Clark Williams, and his story, where he was successful in med device and just up and quit one day. And he told me that, and it blew my mind. And so he went through a transition a couple years before I did, and I just kind of followed a lot of the path that he set. Where that's I think it came from him, that idea of let's build this backwards. And then when I got with a franchise consultant, that was the whole process, and that's the whole process I take people through now. And I did it this morning with a couple. It's like, hey, like let's focus on what your goals and your motivations are, and where you want to be, and then we work backwards on that to find a business that fits into what you're looking for, and not the other way around. So I mean, that mentality is something that translates now to everything. like you said, Kris, it's, you know, even like in my marriage, in, you know, relationships with my kids, it's like every single interaction is an opportunity to either strengthen it or weaken it, right? And trying to look from an endpoint of what I want, you know, out of relationships, out of anything, is kind of shapes the decisions that I make.
That's awesome. Brandon, we won't take up too much more of your time here, as we kind of follow up. I mean, kind of finish up, you know, with our questions and stuff. But so you mentioned, but, you know, I guess kind of shouting out to your website. Your website is what'snextfranchising.com, right? Is, you know, kind of where we can go. And so you guys like a consulting firm, or like, do you guys like, you know, kind of put people in place to go here or talk to these people or whatever, right?
Yeah. I'll walk you through the process real quickly. But yeah, I mean, like I said, from that first time I talked to a consultant, and I've got my website and I'm technically independent, but I'm with a group called FranChoice, which is a consulting network, which gives me access to all their vetted franchises in their inventory. You know, because there's thousands of franchises out there. You know, we've got hundreds in our inventory. You know, we try to, you know, have a high standard, I guess, of who we're sending people to. But yeah, that process, you know, and you can go to the website, and I've got some information there, because I think a lot of people just don't know. They don't know about franchising in general and what it is and what's even possible. So, like I said, on that first call with a consultant that I had, I knew I wanted to do that because I know there's such a need for, you know, for me, for the athlete that's transitioning, that made some money, but definitely needs to do something next with his life. And, you know, I want to be a resource for future guys like me to get this message out there, that I can offer them a service that they don't pay me anything for. It's completely free to them, where if they have even the slightest entrepreneurial bug, they can talk to me and I can take them through a process where they're exploring businesses. And part of that, they get to talk to, they're going to talk to the people in those businesses, running those businesses around the country. But yeah, a quick overview of that process. What it looks like is, you know, hey, you go to my website, you put in a message, you reach out, we'll schedule a call, we'll get on there, introduction, and then, you know, you want to keep moving forward, great. We'll have like a deeper dive where we get into those motivations, we get into your goals, your likes and dislikes, and we create, you know, basically a model of what, you know, of how a business would serve Alec and his family perfectly. Like, what's the fit there? That's your model. And then I go and take that model and I find businesses that fit that model, that make what you're looking for possible. And then I connect you to them. And then from there, I coach you through that process with them. Like, I don't just turn you over to them, good luck. It's, you know, I'm providing resources and insight as a former athlete, as a current, you know, franchise business owner. You know, I'm a sounding board where I can educate and help people through that. So that's kind of what the service is, and it's really, and I use this line, and it's true. And I found that this is a passion of mine. Like, I freed myself up from the day to day, and, you know, conversations with other guys going through the same thing I did. It really does energize me and fill me up. And I want to, you know, it's the first step of hopefully more doing the same thing you guys are, being a resource and helping people going through this, because there's such a need. But the line, what I say is, like, at my darkest point, like, I would have done anything just to cross something off the list of what I was going to do next. So, you know, if 2 hours of my time talking to somebody to help them cross, hey, business ownership off the list, I'm happy to do it. Sign me up.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Brandon, it feels like you're the guy you needed to talk to. Like, you've become the guy that you needed to talk to when maybe you wrote on that baseball and put it in your pocket.
That's right. That's why I got into this, but I knew I had to make it work first. Like I couldn't sit here and say, hey, do this. But I've been franchisee of the year. I've led the system in revenue. I've done those things. So I do feel like I know what I'm talking about at the same time.
No, for sure.
Is the franchise consulting you're doing mostly niched to athletes? Is that where most of your business is coming from, or are you talking to all kinds of people?
I talk to everybody. I mean, that's why I got into it. That's my background. I think that's who I relate to. Talking to football players, basketball players, hockey players. We've all gone through this similar lived experience that we can relate to. Not only that, one of the reasons that I wanted to do it was, as athletes, for good reason, we have a guard up, right? If there's anybody talking about any investment, like boom, that wall goes up.
Instantly.
Right?
Instantly.
Well, I was
That's funny,
there.
Brandon. You're not the first person who's literally said wall. Like someone starts talking about money, the wall goes up, and it's like, I'm not going to talk to you anymore.
Yeah. So I knew that I could break down at least a few bricks out of that wall because I was the athlete. I did live it. I was right where you are. And I'm not selling you anything because you're not paying me a dime. And I'm, I'm living it. I'm living the franchisee part of it too. So I knew to be of service to the people I wanted to, it had to be someone like me to really effectively do it because of that wall.
Agree. Well, Brandon, no, man, we appreciate you coming on again today. If anybody's looking to get connected with you, where can they find you? Instagram, X, I guess, LinkedIn, or obviously you got your website, What's Next Franchising, where they can go find you at.
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as well. I haven't used that in a long time, really. But yeah, if you send me a message, I'll see it eventually. But yeah, just find me. Love to talk to more people. Oh, and to your point, Kris, yeah, I got into this to help athletes. But what I've found too from talking to other people is, man, people transitioning from one career to the other, we have way more similarities than we do differences. Right? The guy that's been doing medical device since he was out of college and now he's 35. There's a lot similar in that experience that we have with him, way more than there are differences.
Yeah, I'll say so I'm 44 next month. I think we all get to that point, right? Where it's like, all right, what's next? Like I've spent 10 years, 20 years doing this thing. And for you guys, it was athletics, right? Alec playing football, you playing baseball. But we all get to a point where it's like, what are we going to do now? And I think that transition happens regardless of what your previous path. Our friend Clark Williams is one of those guys. And I'd say there's a lot of guys my age-ish who are thinking, okay, I've had this career, maybe I've been fortunate enough to make a little bit of money, but I'm bored. I want to pour my life into something else for the next 10 years. What does that look like? Alec and I have talked about this before, but I really love the idea of thinking of your life in 10-year blocks. Right. The first two don't really count because 0 to 20, we're kind of figuring ourselves out. But then if we're lucky, we got 6 blocks of our life, right? If we live till 80, I like the idea of every 10 years, you reinvent yourself and you're doing something along the way. So, when it's all said and done and maybe you're 80 years old, you look back and you said, hey, that was a pretty awesome life. I had a bunch of incredible experiences along the way. I reinvented myself multiple times. And it's just in athletics, you guys are forced to. You're forced to reinvent yourself at an age where most people aren't, whether it's forced, Brandon, to you, like you have an injury, or Alec, when you're just, you age out, it's time, but you're forced to make that transition. And I applaud you for helping people do it because it's not an easy thing.
No, for sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Kris, they call that personality disorder, what you got going on.
Yeah, Kris, hopefully in one of my 10-year blocks, I'll be good at golf. Just hope.
Exactly, right?
There's always hope. Alec's next 10-year block is going to be in tennis. He's going to be a professional tennis player. So Everybody's got their thing. Brandon, it's been a pleasure having you. We'll certainly stay in touch with you. And if anybody comes across looking for franchises, we'll direct them your way. but appreciate you taking all the time with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. And
Yes, sir.
let me know when you put that merch on sale. I'll
I
definitely
will.
grab it.
I'll take a Brandon Beachy jersey too, though. I like that. You know, if you still have one hanging around, we can trade off or something.
All right, we can do that.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you for tuning in to Beyond the Game. Please like, subscribe, comment on your favorite platform. It helps others find the show.